All right, finally gonna get back out here on the BSA A65. Get this engine back in order, back together. Here we go. All right, real quick, a little late getting home from work, but anyhow, real quick, just gonna drop this crank off and for getting balanced. Guy wasn't at the shop. There was some workers there, but they don't handle, I guess, receiving and stuff or discussion on what's getting done. Anyhow, just kind of looking at this thing. Figured, hey, let's see what this thing looks like before it goes to the balance shop, and we'll see what it looks like when we get it back, you know. I've seen some of these things come back, or, you know, not me personally seeing them come back, but I've seen some of these pictures of these things looking like, you know, Swiss cheese once they've had some balance work done. First time I'm doing this, you know, so it's kind of curious. Figured I'd tape this. Also, you know, you get lost in a lot of stuff reading online, you know, to get it balanced, what rods to go with, what not, you know, gapping your piston ring, the center ring, gapping it bigger than the top ring. Just you can really get into a whole lot of different opinions on how stuff's done. But anyhow, I think in my opinion, it's a good idea to get this balanced. Also, they've recommended with running different rods. But even with the original rods, I think it's not a bad idea, even with if you're running stock rods, to maybe get it balanced and checked out. Anyhow, that's it for tonight. Gonna get up early and get this off to that guy, drop it off into the shop. All right, here's a crankshaft. Got it back from a balance shop. They dynamically balanced it. I did take it to one shop. They had it longer than they anticipated, and they said they weren't able to get it to cooperate on their machine. Their numbers, I guess, were not consistent, as the way it was explained. They didn't know if it was their machine or their setup of how to hold it, or if there was something wrong with the crank. Either way, no charge. I got it back. Took it to another guy that has built crankshafts in the past for guys with Nortons. That's how I came across this information, was on a Norton message board. Actually, he wasn't too far away from me, about an hour. And he's done BSA cranks and I think Triumphs too, and obviously Nortons. Anyhow, I measured this original, I believe, drill mark. The book does say not to drill more than 3/16 of an inch in depth and keep them central. I've seen these where they're drilled, you know, here, just pictures on the internet. They're drilled all over the place. I'll show you where he drilled. I did measure this old one, and it's about 3/8. That, I believe, is original. Let me flip this over here, see where he did his lightning. This is where he did his drilling for balancing. He did ask how I rode the bike and what it was going to be used as. I believe he does, guys do hill climbing stuff. I told him it was just street, you know, 2-lane back roads around lakes and farm fields. It's nothing. It's not a race bike. Just looking to get it to run a little smoother. And it was recommended with the rods I'm running to get it dynamically balanced. And so that's where I took it. Dropped it off. He was pretty. His turn time was pretty quick. He had it a little over a week, and I got it back. So yeah, it's time to. We'll take a look at the shim situation I got. Obviously the bearing came off for the balancing, and I noticed one of the shims was different than the other ones. And I'll take a look at what we got here. Real quick, I did measure the holes that he did for balancing. I'm kind of crude how I did it, but obviously they're deeper. The two larger ones would be deeper than the existing one. Originally drilled, I believe, at the factory. I'm sure principles have changed. You know, they static balance these before. I'm thinking what he's done is fine. I'm okay with that. You know, what's done is done. So anyhow, moving on to the shims. I had this larger shim. circumference is a little bit larger, just slightly. But it's not as wide. So I ordered up a set of new shims, and I think I might be able to tighten it up back on with the new shims. Let's see, that put it at, I got some stuff written down here. All right, I had to pull that piece of paper out all the way to see. New shims, 18, and the ones installed by the guy that did the bushing and matched the crank up to the bushing, Frank. It's 17 thou or 16 there, roughly. That was my M float. It was between 2 thou and 3 thou. I might, try these other shims at 18 and just see how it fits. Also, digging through there, I seen the card from the balance guy. This is, his math here, his arithmetic or whatever. He had the pistons and all that, the pins, the rings on them. But yeah, let's see here. We got the old shims here. Here's new. I'm gonna put the cup on. Yakking about the shims. Let's get the bearing on and get it in the cases here. All right, got the bearing on. Gonna pop these cases apart and drop that down in there and check the end play or end float, or which way you want to call it. All right, got all the hardware loose. Going to pull this thing apart here. I'm sure it's going to come right off. Just do the old one-handed grab even. And I'm probably going to try a dry run with the camshaft here. All right, in case it's been a while and you stepped away from an engine for a bit, those grooves are supposed to face the crank web. Double check that here in the book. It says I put the thrust washer on the right side of the crankshaft with the oil grooves next to the crank web. So, all right, we got our breather in there and our spring. Gonna place the crankshaft on this side of the case and then put the crankshaft in the hole there. All right, first thing I'm getting the camshaft out of there, remove the nut. Anyhow, I figured I'd show this real quick. Sorry about the heater coming on. I'm gonna drop the breather down in there. Here's your breather disc. I figure I might not be showing this when I'm gluing the cases together, so I'll do it on the dry run here. Breather discs in. I had some grease on there. I'd advise doing the same. Springs in. And your grooves there are going to line up that breather disc. And the camshaft also has some grease on it. Feel it engaged. Feels smooth. Should work good, last a long time, right? All right, let's drop the crank in. All right, shaky hands McCoy here. I did this nut and this nut first, or bolt, sorry. And went after that nut. Did the two bottom bolts. I'm gonna flip it over and get the remaining nuts and then set it up for the end play check. All right, here we are. We're gonna do the end float check with the 18 thousandths shim stack in there. That was almost 3. About 2.5. Seems like, it's end float, not smash float. If I push too hard, it gets to 3. If I just get it to where it's floating, it's 2.5. Not putting a lot of force into it. Like the book calls for not to exceed 3 thousandths. Also, I noticed in this book, I noticed this book covered up the markings on the front of the engine. There's some stuff stamped in the engine cases and the crankshaft. I never noticed that in the other book. I'm going to take a look. I do got the numbers I can see right there on the crankcase on the forward lug are marked. I never noticed nothing on the crankshaft, but it also has the same spec here: thou and a half to 3 thou for your crankshaft end float. I'm going to move on to the connecting rods here shortly. Stretch method, which is preferred, and the torque method, which is not recommended. I've never used their these connecting rods before, map. If you look in this book, it does call it for the original connecting rods, 22 foot-pounds. And connecting rod bolts, same here, 22 foot-pounds. But their torque method, the not recommended method, is torque to 15, then to 28, loosen to 0, repeat 5 times to burnish threads, and then final torque of 30 foot-pounds. Now the stretch method says 5 thousandths, and using a bolt stretch gauge, rod bolt stretch gauge, which I don't have, or a micrometer. Here's the markings on the front of the case here. I'm assuming that's what they're talking about in there, 808. So gonna pop this apart and see what's on the crankshaft. All right, without taking it apart, see the number they're talking about on the flywheel here. Excuse me. It's 794, and I did the arithmetic for that book, and it doesn't math out for me at all. You know, there's a new bush in here. That thrust washer, stuff like that is different than when this thing was built new. It's my best guess. That's why it's not mathing out. But rolls over nice and smooth. Before, I could grab this thing and bang it back and forth, side by side. Being it didn't have any shims in it. Also, camshafts rolling smooth. Checking all that stuff where I disassemble it. All right, well, I got it apart here. The case half split and the crankshaft's out of the way there. I'm gonna pop off this oil pump and pull the studs because I'm gonna run the SRM oil pump. First one, it came out pretty easy. Basically tighten that nut down to the bottom, ran this one into it, and let's see how this one goes. And out she comes. Not much to it. I'm gonna pop the other one out of there. All right, we got everything cleaned up here. Book, it says use assembly lube. Also says the back side of the shells to be installed just perfectly clean and dry. Going to use this stuff here. Also talks about the bolts, putting the ultra lube the threads, and bolts flange and cap pad. I'm going to get started on that. Get the bearings here installed first. I got both bearings put on that rod. Move over to this rod here. I can't set this up somewhere here. In the original book here for the A65 says all bearings should be coated, all surfaces should be coated, and it says with engine oil. The paperwork for the rod says assembly lube, and the other guy that Frank that did the engine, the boring, the head rebuild, the machining of the timing side bush to this crank, he recommends assembly lube too. So we're gonna go with this stuff, like I said. Contains zinc, moly. All right, got the assembly lube on the bearings. Got my bolts with the Ultra Lube, the ERP Ultra Lube. All right, got one rod on there, stick the other one on here. See this or not? Caps have a line on them, and the rod does also to line up. Getting started. Stick the other bolt in. About all I can get by hand. Hands are a little slippery from all the assembly lube and that ARP bolt lube. It feels pretty good. All right, here's the setup. It's gonna take, I don't think I can record all this. It would be pretty time consuming. I'm gonna they're just snugged up right now, hand tight. I'm gonna run them down evenly, and then start checking them. All right, real quick here, I got some numbers like on the primary side. Slowly bringing it up. I have it at 4 thousandths bolt stretch. I'm starting on the timing side. Basically, I'm taking a little torque wrench set at 180 inch-pounds. And we got 15 foot-pounds in here. And once I get to that, I keep going back with measuring as I slowly bring in the torques. And then I switch up to the bigger torque wrench to 28 foot-pounds. Check again. I'm kind of alternating back and forth, remeasuring between torques. And right now, I haven't hit 180 inch-pounds yet, but slowly bringing it up. They're both at 1,000. I do have to throw it in a vise here once I get further into the higher torque numbers, though. All right, so I got it there. Both those caps, screws, or bolts are torqued 28. I'm gonna do a quick measurement. All right, that one there is at 4 thousandths. Gonna flip the spin crank over, check the other bolt. This side is also, or this bolt, I should say, the opposing bolt, it's also reading 4 thousandths. And that's at 28 foot-pounds. I'm gonna put it back in there, take it up to 30. Not recommended says 30. Curious to see what foot-pounds we hit once we get to the 5 thousandths they're calling out for. All right, this one's at 5 thousandths now. I marked it with a Sharpie. The other one's at 4.5. Torque wrench is set at 35 foot-pounds. I'm gonna bring it up a few more foot-pounds and see where we're at. All right, this side now, this bolt is now at 5 thousandths. I'm gonna check the other side. The other side's at about 5.5 now. Gonna go over to the other side here. Gonna back torque wrench down a little and bring it in slowly the same way. I had to move the dial back to get to where I was at. If that makes any sense. That's where it's at, about 9. and I'll throw it on the other one. It should measure about 4. Yeah, measuring 4. These other bolts are real close. Kind of strange. This one's acting the way it's acting. But yeah, gonna throw it in there, torque it, and see what we get. All right, this side's at 5 thousandths. The other side seems to be at 10 or just a little under. I got the torque wrench set at 36.5. The other one was 37.5. So I'm gonna bump it up a little, try to split hairs here, kind of like the other side. All right, showing 5.5 there, or 5 thou and a half, whatever you want to put it. Excuse me. I think that it was maybe kind of like the other situation up here at the primary side. Bolt size difference slightly on the bottom bolts, or on this page, timing side. Primary side, bigger difference, but they're both caps, connecting rod caps, rod end caps are both torqued 38 foot-pounds, and that got me in my 5 thousandths bolt stretch at 38 foot-pounds. All right, Sunday morning, back out here in the garage, gonna get these crank in the cases here, get this assembled. Real quick before we start on that, just want to touch on a thing on these ARP studs. When I got to the torque like 37.5 and 36.5 on these, and I took them both up to 38 foot-pounds, there was no, the bolts didn't get any tighter, they didn't move, nothing, there was no change. And I'm not gonna like continue on or anything. There's ARP's got some videos on the bolt stretch, and I'm at my measurement, so there's no need to continue on. Just figured I'd touch on that. Just they got some videos explaining it better than I probably could. Anyhow, got a little cup of oil here. Gonna go with the Yamabond here. This stuff here is pretty good too. 3 bond, but there's not much left in there, so we're gonna go with Yamabond. All right, got our bearing lubed up. Let's get that lubed up. Set you up here. Feels smooth. Let's lube up the camshaft. All right, got the camshaft lubed. See in there also the spring and the time breather in there. I'm gonna drop that in. Make sure we line up. Oh. See exactly where those spots are. Kind of see the tang right there. Looking to line up these grooves. That tang. There we go. Feels nice and smooth. Left my light on. We're gonna, the book says to clean the surfaces, which we got the surfaces clean, and it says apply joining cement to both surfaces. I'm gonna get the other one up here on the bench and start putting on a Yamabond, and we're just going on these surfaces. All right, we got the Yamaha bond on both sides here. Gonna put it together here. Let's get you set up over here. All the bearings are surfaces are greased or oiled, I should say. Not a whole lot of places to grab it once it's covered in goop. All right. Make sure that washer's the right way. Jeez, bumping into the cam there, aren't I? Cam's coming down first. And that's it. Cam's moving freely. Easiest way to move the crank here. Let's probably put a nut on there. Don't want to go throwing the wrong nut on there either, though. I believe it's this one. I believe that's the one. Get that paused while I get that nut going. All right, got that nut on there. Everything feels pretty smooth. All right, let's get some hardware in this thing. Doesn't mention Loctite, but I may use some. Yeah, let me get a tube of that. It just says tighten them, doesn't give a torque either. All right, so I got these started here. They're just snugged up. And I'm gonna stick the sump plate on here. Sump plate that's just tacked on there. Just keep the pickup tube from getting damaged. I roll the engine over. And roll this over. Like I said, these are just snugged. And we're gonna start the nuts on the inside. Sure, more of that's going to come out as I torque them. All right, that way I can drop the nuts down in here a lot easier. Use a magnet, drop the lock washers down. other one. Get my head in the way for a second. That's a thin nut too. Nut started here. This one's a little more in the open. Yep. Go figure. Once in the open, most doesn't want to start. There we go. Gonna snug these up. Kind of starting in the middle here. Work my way out. Book doesn't really give a sequence, so I'm kind of just method my own madness here. Of course, different size, the bolts are different sizes. Got definitely some excess Yamabond coming out. I'm gonna wipe that off and snug it up a little more, some 3/8 drive. All right, came back over with the 3/8 ratchet, longer one. Book doesn't give out any torques. I guess you could calculate, figure out bolt size and go off that, you know. That's some of the Suzuki's and Hondas are. You go in the front, there's not a bolt torques specs given. You could go off the size of the hardware. Just going by feel on this. It's just technique, I guess. Like I got. Yeah, that's good. 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 Now there's other bolts that hold this thing in the frame too. These bolts are much smaller up front here. I think the shanks are the same, but the heads are smaller, I should say. Different size socket. Yeah, you kind of got to get a feel for it. You're running the bolt into aluminum, so don't go crazy. Pulling the threads out. Double check these bottom ones. I got the salt plate back on. I'm going to flip it over, make sure the crank spins freely. That's good. Good. And there's one bolt in here. You can only reach with the box end. At least that's all I can. Not much leverage on this wrench either, but that's good. All right, let's flip it over. Sure it rolls good. Oh yeah. Spinning over nice. Yep, real nice. Cam's good. Gotta throw that nut on that cam. That's my plan. There we go. Keep threads protected. Yeah, just going around, wiping any excess Yama bond off. Not like this is a show bike or anything, but you know, at least clean up the mess. This surface here feels real good where the cylinder mates. Some of the stuff's a little rough in the front of the cases. Just the way they built them, I guess, back then. Anyhow, I think that's it for this weekend. Thanks for watching. Feel free to drop a comment, like or subscribe, and have a good week or a good weekend. Later.